an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Goldenhand. Chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, and prologue. An unlikely messenger at the gate. 2 hawks bring messages. An offering to the river. And a man and a creature lie as if dead. In these chapters, I had no idea that Goldenhand was going to contain some of the events of Creature in the Case. And this is a kind of cool idea that I actually really like. And I'm very curious what we're getting here. Chlorr of the Mask is even mentioned. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Yama, first of all, for commissioning this episode, and to both Yama and Abby for helping me figure out what I was meant to read next. This book, like I said, it starts off with the receipt of the message that Nicholas Sayers, I was going to say Nathan, Nick Sayers sends when he's trying to get help dealing with this free magic creature. And I think it's called a Huel, if I'm remembering correctly. And I really like this idea. This is something that, I don't feel I have seen really before. There are a lot of books, series that get popular, where an author will write a small story that's a side character's, experience with something. But it's very rare that whatever that side character experienced is going to be reflected in the main text. It'll usually be, oh, let's see what they're up to. While so-and-so is busy with this, they're going to have their own thing happening. And I rather like getting to see this from both perspectives. I like seeing the response of everybody when they get Nick's very vague message, because if it hadn't been I think Lirael being the one that he sent the message to, of course it makes sense, because for him, Lirael is the one that he knows. There's a couple of moments of sort of doubt as to whether or not this is even asking her to come down. It's well, shouldn't this be for Sabriel? And if you don't know Nick's relationship to Lirael, you would ask that. I mean, doesn't he want the person who's really experienced? But he wants the person that he knows is perfectly capable and also who means something to him, and I like that being mentioned. And also the fact that everybody is sort of thinking, I don't know if this person might just be mistaken. But this also just might be a straight up trap, because a creature of free magic functioning that far south of the wall is pretty much unheard of. And the possibility that they would think it was a trap had not occurred to me. Not necessarily believing it or not treating it with the urgency it deserved. That was something that I could have foreseen. But the idea that they thought it was so outside of the realm of possibility that maybe it was not just a trap, but a trap set up by somebody who doesn't understand the way that magic works. And so probably somebody that's a native Ansel Stjeran and who doesn't understand how this goes. That all makes a lot of sense, So anyway, the prologue is all about Lirael and Sabriel together in death, dealing with the minions, basically, of Chlorr of the Mask. And I did not expect, going back into this book, I did not expect Chlorr of the Mask to come up this soon again. I mean, it's the prologue. The book hasn't even gotten started yet, and she's being mentioned by name. I don't know why I didn't think that, because Chlorr gets away, right? She's like instrumental in getting shit rolling for the Destroyer. And she doesn't get taken out. So I should have known that they were going to have to deal with her at some point, that they wouldn't just let her fade into the fucking background. But more than that, I should have known that the book titled Goldenhand was going to be about fucking Lirael. Natasha, I just finished a short story where we find out that she has been given a golden hand. Like, what is the matter with me? I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. I think that I was just so distracted by how much it sounds like Goldeneye or Goldfinger that I just like didn't even try to make any sort of fucking logical connections. So honestly, when I say I'm surprised Chlorr of the Mask is mentioned so quickly, it's not Chlorr, it's Lirael. I didn't know that the creature in the case was so directly related to Goldenhand. I thought it was going to be, because when I had asked what I should read next, because there's a couple of other short stories in Across the Wall, I believe it was Abby who said that what happens in Creature in the Case ties in with Goldenhand. And I thought what she meant was you will run across a free magic creature and some things that happen there. And then we're going to go to another book where you see that creature again. I don't know why I thought that a free magic creature was going to be the connection of significance and not the main characters that we've gotten to know. But I think it's because there has been sort of each time that we have started a new book, except for like Lirael and Abhorsen, which both have Lirael, we have sort of gotten a new female protagonist with each book. So I just expected that Goldenhand, Lirael got to about her. I figured that her time was up and we were moving on to somebody else. As it turns out, there is another female protagonist, it appears. But as of right now, she's not an Abhorsen. She's not of the blood. I don't really know what kind of significance she's going to have. She gets a chapter all to herself, but that might just be to set us up and we won't spend that much time with her from here on out. I don't know. So anyway, in summary, I'm a dodo bird who did not make very obvious connections. So in the prologue, Lirael and Sabriel are both pursuing Chlorr, who has come in through, they are at the 6th gate, I believe. And normally the dead would really be like swarming around them, but they are clearly Abhorsen, as marked by what they are wearing, being between the bells that have mahogany handles instead of ebony, which are the signature of a necromancer, and their clothing being covered with the silver keys. Do you know what, guys? Do we ever find out why the keys are the Abhorsen's symbol? I feel like that was mentioned and I have forgotten what it was. But I'm very curious about where that comes from, because it's interesting that it's not bells or something that, you know, when I think of the Abhorsen, keys aren't really something. Are the bells meant to be sort of representative of keys? Anybody who feels like telling me, let me know. And so, yeah, we have the two of them pursuing her. Sabriel is like really frustrated that she has evaded them. And Lirael, for her part, we get a lot of Lirael coping with grief. And this in particular, it's something that keeps being brought up, but it's brought up here, which I didn't expect, and I should have, because Lirael hasn't come into death that often. So death is still filled for her with memories of having gone through here before with the disreputable dog who is now gone. And I wonder if the disreputable dog will ever come back. It's such an odd way that she went out that I'm wondering if she isn't still around a little bit. But I don't know. Lirael still felt the pain of that loss, and the dread, dismal days that had followed the binding of Uranus were never far from her thoughts. The only slight note of cheer from that time had come from Nicholas Sayre, who had told her how the dog had sent him back from this same cold river, albeit on the very fringe of life. Lirael would have liked to talk to Nicholas more about this, particularly if he had seen which way the dog went, grasping at the hope the wily hound had not gone toward the final gate. Same Lirael. In fact, Lirael would have liked to see more of Nick in general, for he was one of the very few people she had ever met who she had immediately liked and had felt some unspoken connection to, or at least potential for something of the sort. But Nick was gone too. Not dead, but he needed to escape the legacy of both free magic and charter magic to live a normal life. She must forget him. So here's my first clue about the timing of everything and the fact that, like, you know, her meetup with the injured Nick has not happened yet. And also, I think it's really funny that, like, later on as well, it turns out Lirael doesn't even know that she's interested in Nick. She's, like, drawn to him, and it's very clear to us as outside readers that, like, that's what's... Sweetie, you have a crush on him. It's fine. What, you know? But she's like, I couldn't let him die before I what? Like, girl, before you do him, before anything, it's obvious. Get with the program, girl. She's so clueless, you know? And also I like the fact that, like, there is an element to her being drawn to him. Obviously this happened, like, him having the piece of the destroyer in him happened before they met. So who knows what it would have been like if she met him before all of this went down. But from where we're standing, he is, like, one of the few people alive that is going to be able to understand the reality of what they faced at Forwin Mill. Like, there are people who came in and like Sabriel and Touchstone were there and helped as they could, but they swooped in after dealing with, like, things separately. And Nicholas was possessed. He was put through hell. And I feel like there's almost a trauma bond. And I don't say that in a dismissive way. I'm not trying to say, like, oh, this attraction isn't real. It's just that you have a trauma bond. Trauma bond is a very legitimate reason to feel like camaraderie with somebody. It's understandable to a huge degree that if there is something that was a formative moment for you that changed the course of your entire life, you would define yourself around it. And if other people don't really understand it, you would find it really frustrating. And you would want to be around a person who not only gets it, but for whom it was also a formative transforming experience. Not necessarily in a good way, but it was, and they can understand your feelings and hangups and grief surrounding that. And then setting all of that aside, and just the fact that he was brought back by the disreputable dog, I feel like a grasping at what remains happening. And not in a desperate, sad way. I just mean there's a link between Nick and the disreputable dog. And it makes a lot of sense to me that that would make him of interest to Lirael. You know, that's just a natural thing. And also, I'm an idiot again. Because I had said when we finished the last story, isn't it weird that it sounds like there's somebody in Nick's ancestry that is related to one of, like, the 9 great powers? And I fucking didn't even think about, like, Uranus leaving its mark in his blood because Uranus possessed him. Honestly, before I even thought of Uranus possessing him, I thought of the disreputable dog baptizing him with the charter mark, and I thought that maybe because she was clearly one of the powers, that was what was in his blood because of the baptism kind of thing. And I didn't even think of Uranus, but the two of them are mixed together. And that's part of it, probably. I mean, Uranus by himself would be quite a contender. But to have her mixed in, and obviously it's her charter mark, like, that was able to hold back the free magic so that things could balance out inside of Nick. But yeah, his blood must be just like a series of contradictions. There's a lot going on in there. Poor Nick, man. He really has been put through it, hasn't he? So anyway, back to death. Sabriel is like, oh, it was definitely Chlorr. And you will be able to sense as you continue to do this kind of thing when you have come across a greater dead and which one it is. And I bet you can already kind of do that. And when Lirael feels around, she's like, yeah, I think so. And Lirael's sort of wondering if Chlorr has gone deeper into death and if they're going to have to follow, because Lirael isn't really ready to go deeper. And Sabriel doesn't think so. She's like, I think she went sideways and like looped around and is heading back toward life. And then she turns around and realizes that there are some, Sabriel says, to do that, Chlorr must be anchored in life. I destroyed the shape she wore, but even at that time, I wondered. She was very old. I could feel that age, a leaden weight within the far younger skin. There are various ways to extend a life. I was too busy to consider which she had used and became busier still, as you know. But now I think she must be connected to some anchor in life. That is why she did not fully obey my bells and did not die the final death. And Lirael's like, what? How could you even do that, though? And I thought it was interesting that she didn't know, that it was something that she had no concept of. I mean, you know, we find out pretty quickly, we are reminded pretty quickly that the Book of the Dead it's not just a regular textbook that tells you like the beginning, middle, and end of how to be an Abhorsen. It reveals what you need to know when you need to know it, or when it decides you need to know it. We are assuming that it is correct about that, and fingers crossed it is. But there's still plenty that Lirael doesn't know. And Sabriel says, there are passages from the book which speak to the point, though it may not show those pages to you. It has its own ideas of when the reader is ready. We shall have to find out in due course, but Chlorr by herself is not of primary importance, not now that Uranus is bound again, and provided she stays in the north. There are other more immediate problems. Some at hand, I would say. And then they look up and there are like 70 dead creatures that are ready to attack them because they have been sent by Chlorr. And what's hilarious is that these things are all very reluctant to do it. I love that they can sense all of these creatures were bullied into it, but none of them want to be here. They know that these two are Abhorsen and that they are not really going to be much of a match, but they have to do what they were told. So she uses the bell, Sabriel does. And which bell does she use? I'm trying to remember how this goes. Because lurching and hopping, darting and zigzagging they came. So weird the way they're described. Under the compulsion of the bell. Sereneth. That's it. She tells them to stop moving. And then she looks over at Lirael, who has Kibeth. And that sends them on to the final death. The dead began to groan and sob under Kibeth's spell, and then as one they turned and began to shuffle. Lirael kept the bell ringing, and the dead started to run and hop and skip, slowly moving into a great circle, a horrible parody of some village dance as performed by monsters. Twice this long parade of dead trod around in an ever-closing circle, compelled by Kibith. The third time the sixth gate opened under them with a great roar, drawing them down and onward, never to return. So that's pretty satisfying. So, Chapter 1, An Unlikely Messenger at the Gate, takes place at Greenwash River Bridge, North Castle. And this brings me back to the opening contents of this book where we see a couple of maps. I found it very interesting that up top, coming away from Belissaire on the first map, there's just an arrow that says to Estwale. Estwale doesn't even like appear on the map. That's how like far away it is. And then when you go to the second map, we get to see how much there is north of the old kingdom we are familiar with. We have the Great Rift, high steppes, low steppes, northwest desert. I mean, Old Kingdom is a tiny fragment, really, of the available land. And I didn't know about any of this. And this might have been mentioned in previous books, or maybe Garth Nix had not come up with this yet. But I find it very kind of fun, honestly, that we get this whole rest of this like universe, and the continent has still continued on beyond the borders of the map that we're looking at. So there is still a lot of potential for other lands to exist here, and that they will be revealed later, you know. But I just found it really interesting once you see like just how far away Estwale is from Belissaire. I mean, in the grand scheme of this second map, it's not that far, but it's more than I was picturing when I was reading the previous book. And then seeing the size of the Great Forest, I underestimated how great the Great Forest is. That shit is big. So yeah, I just found this interesting. Maps are not usually something that I particularly care about in books. They can be very useful, and sometimes they are crucial, like with Song of Ice and Fire. But I never open a book and I'm like, yay, a map. That's not something that I care about. But because this is a new map to a familiar series, I had a different reaction. I was like, oh, what's this? All right, let's take a look. So Unlikely Messenger at the Gate is told from the point of view of a couple of guards that are watching over the entry from the like into the Old Kingdom. They are guarding what's sort of the equivalent of the wall in Song of Ice and Fire, where they don't want to be letting wildlings south into the Seven Kingdoms. And the two who are watching here, there is a young sort of green strap who doesn't really know what he's doing and is mostly respectful, asking, for the superior's interpretation of what's going on, but also clearly is a little bit impulsive. Haral is the name of the older woman who's been with the guard for 26 years. And she gets a little bit irritated with him later because he just fucking fires an arrow without like really thinking through the implications of what's happening here. His name is Aaron, by the way, and I don't know if we'll ever see them again, but the girl who's at the gate is a messenger. She is claiming passage under the right of a messenger. But the two of them are a little bit suspicious of whether she is who she says she is. And as she's standing there trying to convince them that she is, these people come up behind her and they look like really bad news. And very understandably, Aaron and Haral both think that she could be a ploy to get them to open the gate so that these people behind her rush the gate. She tells them that she says, some call me Farron. And when they ask her who the message is for, she says, must I tell you, in a way that really sounds like she doesn't know if the rules mandate that is information that she has to share. Apparently she would rather not. who comes up behind her is so crazy sounding. So it says, 3 figures were coming up into sight out of the swirling snow. 2 of them were on horseback, nomads clad in the typical long woolen tunics of black and gray, slit at the sides for riding, and wound about the waist with multicolored silk sashes. Those who knew could tell the tribe from the pattern of colors in a sash. But they were not common nomads. One was a shaman with a silver ring around his neck, and from that ring a chain of silvered iron ran to the hand of the second nomad, the shaman's keeper. Even without seeing the neck ring and silver chain, Harl and Aaron knew immediately who or what the nomads must be, because the third of their number was neither on horseback nor was it human. It was a wood weird, a creature of roughly carved and articulated ironwood, twice as tall as the horses, its big misshapen eyes beginning to glow with a hot red fire, evidence that the shaman was goading the free magic creature he'd imprisoned inside the loosely jointed pieces of timber into full motion. Wood weirds were not so terrible a foe as some other free magic constructs, such as spirit walkers, whose bodies were crafted from stone. For wood weirds were not so entirely impervious to normal weapons. Nevertheless, they were greatly feared, and who knew what other servants or powers the shaman might have. So Harl begins to sound the alarm, and this poor messenger at the gate is like, oh my god, they are after, can you not see that I am what they're after? Let me in. And Aaron is this has just made him more suspicious. And Harl rightfully is like, this seems like if you're a messenger, they will just leave you alone. And Farron's like, no, I promise they will not. And she decides to defend herself using an arrow tipped with an arrowhead that has this dark glass filled with a white smoke. And when she pulls this out, Aaron yells free magic and fires straight down at her and gets her in the leg. We find out later that this was a defense that's well known if you are if you have been doing this job a minute, because that is what tips off Harl, the fact that she was about to use one of these weapons, to the fact that she is dead fucking serious. They were after her, and she is trying to end this creature. If they were a ploy together, she wouldn't risk losing a free magic creature like this by trying to fire at it. So, yeah, she turns around, she manages to shoot it, and it just strikes it in the trunk, and there's a moment where it doesn't seem like it's done anything, and then it starts to seize up, like the wood is becoming less and less mobile. And its eyes, which had been flames, they sort of begin to shrink back and become less and less red. And then all of a sudden, the whole thing just bursts into flames. And the fucking shaman starts screaming in anger and fear. And for a second, I thought the shaman was screaming in pain, that somehow it was like physically connected to the wood weird. But it seems as if it's just like rage. It's just a reaction. It's not actually a physical response. So once Harl is able to explain to Aaron, like she definitely was the one they were after, they look over and try and see where she went, and they can't find any trace of her. It's snowing, and, she just got away. And she said, when she came to the gate in the first place, that the message she had was for the Chlorr. And she's realizing now, Harl is, that probably she should have let Farron in, and this is going to be a bit of a problem. The shaman and his keeper lay sprawled on the snowy ground, both dead, with quite ordinary arrows in their eyes, evidence of peerless shooting at that range in the dying light. Their horses were running free, spooked by blood and sudden death. And I rather liked this, that the 2 threats are taken out, and that it's done in such a display of skill. I'm a fan of competence. What can I say? So then we go to Belissaire, to the messenger hawks arriving to try and summon Lirael. And we get introduced to Mistress Finney. I don't believe we've met her before, who raises all of the messenger hawks. And we get to find out just how these work, which is kind of cool. It says, born from a charter-spelled egg and trained for its work since it was a fledgling, the hawk carried a message imprinted in its mind, and with it the burning desire to fly as swiftly as possible to the Tower Mews in the royal city of Velisair. So that's pretty fun to see how that works. And then we find out a little bit later that a hawk's mind is small, and it's basically Twitter. It's 140 characters, and it's got a bird for its logo. And if you go too far with it, you can't there's no indicator showing you that you're over by 15 letters. You will have gone to the trouble to put your whole message into this bird. And by the time you realize that you went over capacity, because each bird is different, you have to erase it and start completely over again, which is apparently kind of a pain in the ass. So frequently messages get sent that are cut off because the person didn't realize that they were at capacity, or they just could not be bothered to do it all over again. And that is really to me, a big flaw in the thing. And I would like for people to, every time they go over, please erase and do it again. That gives me too much goddamn anxiety. That's like the equivalent of somebody being like, whatever you do, don't ever, yeah, hey, what's up, man? What were you going to say? What were you going to say? So here comes the message. Find out where the person in waiting Lirael is. Tell her I'm transcribing an urgent message. To Magistrix Wiverley College, Nick found Bad Kingdom creature Dorrance Hall. Tell Abhorsen help. Stop. This is from Nicholas Sayre. Stop. Via Danger's Valet Applethwick. End. And this is that's the initial what's it called? I want to say phonograph. That's not the word I want. Oh well. It's the original message that he had tried to send, followed up by the commentary from the Magistrix. Now, Dorrance Hall is several hundred miles south, so this seems very unlikely. But I have heard it is some sort of secret government place, so perhaps it should be investigated. I have sent telegrams, there it is, to the Bane Consulate and the Embassy in Corvair, but have not yet had an answer. And then it ends. So Mistress Finney writes this out. And then there's another message for the king from the Greenwash Bridge Company, not marked urgent, follow up to their earlier report. Not marked urgent? Come on, guys. Mark it as urgent. There was a weird. Trying to attack somebody at the gates in full view of guards and very good marksmen. Obviously, shit is going left. I think you should mark it urgent. I'm just saying. Okay? Fuck. And apparently, Princess Elamir is the one who is taking care of this. I'm kind of hopeful that Princess Elamir gets a little bit more to do in this book. And I don't know, if that's going to happen. I won't be mad if it doesn't. But Elamir is a bit compelling to me because she is so different in terms of not really I don't know. She doesn't not have any magical ability, does she? She's got a charter mark and everything, but that's not her focus. That's not what she's good at. She's she runs shit. She's a manager. I would like to see a bit of that being highlighted. Getting to see somebody who's extremely kind of competent in the way that Nicholas Sayre is, where he doesn't have magic, but he is just has leadership quality and a lot of good common sense and thinks on his feet. And she seems like that type also. And I would like to see a little bit of that coming from another female character who, I won't say she was an antagonist or anything, but she was a little bit of a pain in Sam's ass. And I'd like to see that in a nicer light, see the advantages of that. So Lirael is hurrying to get her message. And as she is, she's looking at the golden hand and thinking about how it is really remarkable that it already feels normal to her, that it's been spelled so that it feels like actual flesh and blood and kind of has a give and is soft. Like, it looks like gold and it fucking shines like gold because Sam decided to put a spell on it that makes it glow. And Lirael's like, why'd you do that? Why would you do that, sir? Nobody needed that. We all know I have a golden hand. It's already drawing plenty of attention. I don't need it to literally glow. Can we not? And she feels a little bit bad about it. Like, she's planning to try and find a spell to take this off. But she wants to do it in such a way that maybe like Sam won't notice, or so that she can turn it on and off around him rather than take it off entirely, because she feels like he'll be hurt if she alters his design, which I don't know. I just found that kind of hilarious. They just but I made it glow just for you. What good does that do anybody? Like, what is the purpose of it? And Lirael is really very uncomfortable with the fact that everybody knows who she is and what she did. And they're all so grateful in this way that she clearly finds embarrassing. So she she does a fucking Jasmine and goes to the marketplace dressed as a commoner. And everybody immediately is like, oh shit, look at that golden hand. It's Lirael. And she's like, fuck. And then they all try and just give her stuff. Because she's like out here trying to support businesses. She's trying to be a good citizen. And they're like, yeah, but you like saved us all from the apocalypse. So you can just take that apple. And she's like, I wanted to pay for it though. God, being famous is so hard. And honestly, I feel her on that. That's always been like, as much as part of me really relishes the idea of fame, of having influence. That's really the main thing, is like the power, right? That's most people's thing. I have always felt a lot of compassion for the fact that celebrities cannot like go out and live their lives without being photographed every second. And that all of the smallest things they do will be splashed across some website or some tabloid page at the supermarket. And they are never really going to know a moment's peace unless they like rent an island. And even then, there are telephoto lenses now that can reach fucking, probably not even then. So to a degree, I definitely understand. And Lirael, it's not like she's a celebrity because she's living her dream life and has like this job that she loves and makes a ton of money on. She's super famous because she sacrificed everything, nearly died, and lost like her companion in an effort to face off with a magical foe who was very terrifying. It's not really a kind of like history that you want to be sharing with all of these randoms. It's not like, I'm sure she doesn't resent that people know it, but I am certain that if she had the option to make it so that people didn't know what happened, I bet she would choose that over what's happening now. I think she'd rather live in anonymity than this. I don't know though, because then you say that and I wonder like, well, if it got taken away and nobody seemed to care, would she be like, I fucking saved you and you can't even, who knows? But I don't know. I felt for Lirael a little here because she's just kind of got a lot on her plate after all of that. So she like latches on to this message from Nick and is immediately about to hop into a fucking paper wing and get the hell out of there. She just wants to be away from all of this, from all of these people who are doing their best, so doing their best to make her feel at home. They are her family. And she wants so much to like, she understands that they are making an effort to include her in their lives and to train her and do right by her, really, is the summary of it. But she can't help the fact that she is used to a life of solitude. And it's sort of funny because all she had ever wanted when she was living with the fucking Chlorr was to be one of them, to be included in their whole thing. And now she's got this family that is trying so much to include her. And the timing is just all wrong. You know, it's when she was looking for the stability that you do as a child, she wanted to have this thing that she shared with people that she lived with and be part of something. But now that she has gone through this like traumatic event, it's kind of hard for her to like come back down to earth and relate to people and like ordinary everyday shit. And it's an interesting thing because it's like something that I know a lot of soldiers go through also. You know, they'll do these like really high risk missions and have it all on the line. And then they'll come home and they're just kind of like, what am I doing? And they have an itch to go back because it feels like that's stuff that actually matters, you know? And I can understand that. I mean, this stuff matters as well, but I can really, in contrast, I could see how you sort of get hooked on things that are, they feel like high impact and there's like a real immediate payoff. Not to say that Lirael wants to be out here doing, but you know what I mean? Like there is a sort of anticlimax when you have to go back to living an ordinary life after dealing with something like this. And yeah, we get a little bit of a look at like how she's trying to not dwell on the grief of the losing the disreputable dog. And she knows that the dog would not like the fact that she has been so sad, but also she feels how she feels. And she just wants to be by herself for a little while. She keeps being presented with things. First of all, working on recovering from her wound, learning how to like use this hand that's new, learning how to use the bells. There's been go, 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 always some new activity. And it just doesn't seem like she has been given the space to grieve and actually process what happened. So anyway, she is about to hop into a paper wing and just fucking head out and follow up on this. And she runs into Elamir. And Elamir is like, well, that could be a trap. And Lirael has a pretty nice moment here of realization that she had been about to just drop everything the second that she heard somebody was trying to summon her, because she was just really eager to be out and not really being smart about it at all. And she feels a little bit like, oh shit, which, yeah, girl, maybe, you know, just be a little bit fucking more careful. So yeah, her and Elamir, like eventually Elamir comes around and is like, okay, it does seem like you should go down there, but also you need to have like an escort. So I am going to let some people know that you're coming because they need to get you over the border there. And also they point out, and I didn't think of this, but Elamir is sort of like, I mean, a free magic creature loose in Ancelstier, you would think that the Chlorr would have seen that. And Lirael points out that like their visions aren't always clear. They see lots of like potential futures, and occasionally they see shit too late. So they might be seeing it right now, but it's like, fuck all. It's fuck all kind of used to us because we already got this message and everything. So she tells Elamir about how he bore the fragment of Uranus inside his heart, and I could feel the free magic within him even after. And Elamir is really startled. She had no idea that that was like still there. And then she's thinking, well, we should never have let him go to Ancelstier then. Like if he's got free magic, that shit could take over and he could be really dangerous. And Lirael says no, even though she doesn't know for sure that's really not something they should be concerned about. But she says, I don't think that will happen. Because mostly of the disreputable dogs charter magic. And Elamir says maybe he is the free magic creature. The telegram could have been mixed up. And I was like, damn, Elamir, you are suspicious AF. I'm not mad at it. But I just kind of like that she keeps tossing all these things around here. And also, this makes me curious if Nick does indeed come back with Lirael, because that's how the last story ended, was the two of them and him deciding that he needs to go to the Old Kingdom. I guess that we're going to see Elamir treat Nick with a lot of suspicion. And I'm curious how everyone else is going to react to him as well. Is she going to kind of keep it to herself that she even knows this is going on with him? Or is she going to say something to somebody else and then all of a sudden, by the time he gets up here, everybody is going to know that he had an encounter with this free magic being inside him? I don't know how much of a gossip she is. And even if she's not a particular gossip, she could be overheard saying something and it just gets out. So yeah, I'm just, I hope it's not too bad, because I feel like Nick has just been through such hell that I would like him to be welcomed here and treated well and treated as if he is trusted and not a bomb that could go off at any second. So anyway, we have the scene where Lirael goes down to see what's going on, and she comes across the free magic creature, and there is the daisy chain around it, which I didn't like, because I had said I wondered what each of the chains had signified, and she says that the blossoms, something like this, could be used to put the creature into a state where it is willing to negotiate, which I think is really interesting. Let's see, I'm trying to find the spot where it says that. There was an oddity. It had a chain of daisies around its neck, signifying that someone else had already tried some magic against it. Certain flowers, herbs, spices, metals, and scents used in particular shapes or patterns could briefly compel free magic creatures into action or inaction. A chain of days eye flowers would make some creatures pause, if nothing more, and the more powerful and intelligent, like the Hrul, would sometimes be negotiated with in that state. So first of all, days eye flowers. Is that where the word daisy comes from? Because their center looks like the sun? Days eye? Really? I can't tell if that's just him being clever, if that's a real thing. That's kind of, I kind of like it. However, she sees this creature, and of course, when we read the creature in the case, Nick was passed out for all of this. He didn't see her arrive. He just woke up and she was above him. So we're seeing what went on while he was essentially unconscious. And she comes across the creature and is figuring out exactly how to deal with it. And knows that she was red, but she's trying to remember when she gets distracted at the feeling of somebody dying nearby. And that is what attracts her to Nick. And I didn't realize that he was this close when she found him. I didn't know it was this dire. I thought when he passed out, it was just a shock of everything. And then the losing of blood. I didn't know that he was really gonna fucking kick it. And she tries to use magic to heal him. And that shit slides right off him, which we have seen already before, and that was why it took the disreputable dog helping out. And this is where it says, Lirael hadn't expected to see Nick so soon, and not here. A wave of emotion struck her, feelings she found difficult to understand or even acknowledge. She had been eager to see him because she had felt some sort of kinship or something. She wasn't sure what when she had met him before. Even when he was under the sway of Uranus, though she had felt sorry for him then, and kind of maternal or sisterly or something. and after the breaking and binding of the destroyer, they had lain side by side on stretchers, both deathly hurt, talking of her friend, the dog. Now all those feelings came back, but were overlaid with a much stronger emotion. Fear that he was about to die before she even had a chance to... A chance to what? Girl, come to terms. Come on. So as we know, she is able to save him by using this really strong magic that works in like golden, like tornadoes. But it takes a ton of energy and effort for her to do it. Like, she has to make sure to keep a constant eye on the free magic creature, because it looks like it's passed out, but she can see that it has blood on its mouth. So she's like, that shit's about to move. Like, any second now, it's just going to get up. So I better fucking watch my back. And that's why she tries using some like simple spells initially. And because they don't do anything, she's forced to do something a lot more intricate that takes way more attention. So as she does that, the creature, it says it would take her only a few minutes to get both. She hurried toward the gate, not noticing that behind her the Hruel's black violet pupiled eyes had flickered open, and the muscles around its hideously wide mouth were beginning to twitch. To which I'm like, nope, don't like that. We know she gets it, but I don't care. I don't like that. But that's all from chapter 4. A man and a creature lie as if dead. The various uses of spirit glass arrows. I did say that I read that one, I think. So let's talk about Farron. Farron is injured, but the arrow that was shot at her by that guard did not go through her leg. It just sort of grazed her. And we find out that she is from a community where there is a being called the Witch with No Face, which I am going to assume is Chlorr of the Mask. I don't know if that is true or can be true, because when we see Chlorr of the Mask, she's got the brass mask that Lirael tried on. And this witch is taking different human bodies. And I wouldn't think that Chlorr of the Mask would continue to do the like bronze mask thing if she didn't need to. I mean, that's such an identifying marker. And if you're stealing bodies, I feel like it's to your benefit if you aren't recognizable. So you wouldn't do that. Or if she takes over bodies and like the essence of what she looks like comes through. But anyway, what I'm saying is I could see this being Chlorr of the Mask, but it might not be. And I'm not prepared to totally put all my eggs in that basket. But that whole like tie to life feels like this is where that's linked to. And the fact that it's like so far north and in this like really remote area, when we know how much Lirael liked being alone, I could see this being the way this works. I just don't understand. I don't know, because she's like on fire when she's Chlorr of the Mask, but how is she doing that when she's like in a borrowed human body? I don't understand. But it turns out that all the clans that live up amongst what are called the 20 tribes, they each have to give a tribute. And well, not all of them, 19 out of the 20. There's apparently one that's like a holdout and does not give her offerings. Only the raft people who drifted across the bitter sea in the far west had managed to avoid the tribute and the retribution of the Witch with No Face by the simple expedient of taking their rafts to the far side of their salty waters. The horse folk of the steppe and even her own mountain dwellers, they all gave the Witch with No Face the required offerings. So it turns out that Farron is called what she is because she was an offering. And it says later her very smallest not sister had tried to call her offering like the adults did, but only Fern had come out. While the adults always called her offering, as was traditional, nearly all the children called her Farron. At least they did when she was allowed to see them, which was not very often. Each clan's chosen offerings had to live away from the rest of their people, a league or more from the main camp, to be overseen by the tribe's best teachers, who ensured the offerings would grow up to be physically and mentally strong. Fast and lithe, supple in mind and body, trained with bow, sword, and knife, taught to speak the common language of the clans in the Old Kingdom, even to read and write as well, something most nomads never bothered with unless they were to become a witch or shaman. The witch with no face wanted only the best when it came time to move into her new body. And we find out that if she hasn't selected an offering by the time they're 17, they kill that offering and burn the body and present the witch with the ashes to prove that she has been killed, which I am absolutely, I have no idea why she needs that proof. If they've been trained and you don't need the body, just let them live their lives. Why do you have to kill them? What's that about? And why does she need proof that they're dead? This is some fucking Snow White level shit. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just really... It says something had happened to the witch some 8 moons past, a great defeat that had completely destroyed the body she inhabited. It's gotta be Chlorr. That timing, it all lines up. This had briefly been a cause of rejoicing until it became clear the death of her body did not mean the witch was actually dead herself. She had returned as a terrible spirit, something like the entities which inhabited woodweirds and spirit walkers, but much more powerful because the shamans and witches could not control her, and even the most powerful spirit glass arrows simply enraged her instead of ensuring her final end. Yeah, all right, it's Chlorr. I said I wasn't going to put my eggs all in that basket, but they're in there. Because now that whole, enraged her. Yeah, she's got that fury, baby. That sounds right. C-Star says, I've read that Daisy is a corruption of Day's Eye in our world too, so-called because its flowers close at night and reopen in the morning. Oh, okay. I didn't know about that closing and opening. Makes sense. Thank you. So Farron had been separated and, brought up being able to handle her shit. And then it says for some reason, when they all thought that the witch, being a spirit, wasn't going to need offerings anymore, and that maybe she would let the ones that had been selected just continue to live their lives. But for some reason, she's afraid of them. So she orders for all of them to be killed. And the people of the Athask had sent an urn containing human ashes, but not those of their offering. They did this because another witch had told them so. A witch who had died some 9 years before. And as soon as I started reading this, I was like, oh my God, it's Lirael's mom. And it is. She is a Claire, and she is able to see some shit is happening and gives them a message that Farron is supposed to take down, to the Old Kingdom. But for some reason, they don't fucking treat it, even though she was right about a bunch of other stuff, with the urgency that they are supposed to. And they don't send Farron until shit has really started to go left. And I'm just like, guys, what did she need to do to convince you? She saved y'all's asses several times, and you cannot be asked to just send a messenger after she dies. She died. She's trying to help you, you dickheads. So irritated, I'll tell you what. So Farron is fucking bound and determined to get this message where it needs to go. And she has it memorized. But she's only ever seen one map of how to get there. And that map wasn't even particularly accurate, we are told. And she has to cross this river and escape all of these people that are going to be pursuing her, trying to kill her on the orders of this witch. And I wonder if the witch was told that she was going to be brought down by one of her offerings one day. And so she's doing that thing that they do in fairy tales where they try and avoid their fate and they cause it to occur. But she's running and she builds this raft because the best thing she can do is find a fast mode of transportation, and being on a raft on this river is going to be her best bet in terms of getting away from the people pursuing her. So she very carefully builds one, like painstakingly, while watching her back all night because she's sure they're going to get her at any minute. And she really does just barely finish before they come upon her. And the raft floats, but she is not dry. And she starts to freeze. And I really love Garth Nix describing how uncomfortable it is and how she's like starting to lose feeling and like falls asleep and then like wakes up panicked because she knows that she could freeze to death in her sleep really easily. And eventually she decides to use one of the last arrowheads for a fire, because it turns out that the magic inside, it can be broken open and it'll make a fire. But that fire it's similar. It reminded me of Fiend Fire in Harry Potter, where it's like kind of toxic and wildly out of control. If you aren't super careful with it, nothing can put it out except for waiting for time or the correct spells, which apparently that's not super common. So using this to warm herself is riddled with potential pitfalls. And it also sends up this toxic black smoke that will be visible during the day. And she winds up using this successfully and contains it all within this little pot and sort of hunches over it to stay warm. But she falls asleep despite trying not to. And the last sentences of her chapter are, "The smoke was as good as invisible now in the night, but come the morning, that plume would be like a sharply drawn line of charcoal against the blue sky, declaring to all with eyes that there was something unusual adrift on the greenwash." So I'm a little worried about Farron, but I like her a lot as a character. You know, I'm interested. The start of her story reminds me of the start of Sabriel's story, where we really join with her as a character when the shit has already started to go down. You know, like she's immediately on her way somewhere. And with Sabriel, it's not quite this immediate, but it's close. So yeah, so those are the first chapters. And thank you again to Yama for commissioning this. Thank you, C-Star, for being in the chat. I hope you guys are enjoying the coverage, and I'll be seeing you soon with a new episode. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.